Today we're going to dive in specifically to the lone survivor of the Luncheon mushroom massacre from you-know-where, and we're going to be talking about Ian Wilkinson's time on the stand.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey, hey.
Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. That's a sofa back there. Actually, it's a bed. And this is certainly a Paul. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, well, guess what? Sorry to say, but, well, I'm still Paul. Okay, so, y'all, we're continuing on with the mushroom massacre, the mushroom luncheon from you-know-where. And what I wanted to do is, because we briefly touched on Ian Wilkinson's testimony, but I wanted to talk, like, basically dedicate a video to just kind of sit here and talk about that and go a little bit more in depth with it, as well as my opinion on it. So that's what this video is going to be. The mushroom massacre trial is the trial against Erin Patterson. Erin Patterson lives in Australia. This is where this took place. She invited a bunch of her in-laws as well as her estranged husband to a luncheon. She served them beef Wellingtons. The beef Wellingtons were poisoned with death caps. Now the question is, did she intentionally do that, or was it by accident? So 3 people lost their lives. 1 person almost did. He survived, luckily, thank God. His name's Ian, and he took to the stand. So let's go ahead and talk about what Ian had to say. So one of the prosecutors would start off asking Ian about, like, the obvious question, right? What was your relationship like with Erin Patterson? And I'm going to quote what he had to say here. He said, I would say our relationship was friendly, amicable. It didn't have much depth. We were more like acquaintances. We didn't see a great deal of each other. Now, Heather is Ian's wife, and he said, Heather would have seen Erin more than me, talked to her more than me, but we didn't consider that the relationship was close, right? Now she asked the next obvious question, which was, how would you define Erin? And I'll quote him again. He says, just seemed like a normal person to me. When we met, seemed quite friendly. We never had arguments or disputes. She just seemed like an ordinary person. Now the prosecutor would then spend a pretty good amount of time walking Ian through key events related to the luncheon, right? From getting the invitation to hours just before he and his wife Heather would leave for, the luncheon, Erin's home. Now, Ian would later tell the jury about the events preceding the meal, and obviously, as we know now, like the horrible aftermath. Again, we talked about this in the video, so some of the previous video, some of this is a little bit of a repeat, but we're just gonna get through it here. So again, let's talk about that whole thing about when they went to the house, when they first get there, right? They're touring the home, and Erin's like, hello, welcome to my Annie Wilkes home. Hello, welcome to my misery home. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. She's like, this is my kitchen. And then a couple of the people were like, oh my God, girl, like, we're doing our pantry. We want to see yours. And I'm going to quote what Ian had to say about this. So Ian said, Erin seemed reluctant for the guest to look in her pantry. Like, thought maybe it's a mess, and she was embarrassed. So I decided not to add to that embarrassment. Now, Ian said that when he entered the kitchen from looking at the garden, he saw Erin, she's like mashing the potatoes up, putting food on the plate. So she's doing that. Now, he said that both Gail and Heather offered to help Erin place the food, plate the food, do all the stuff. And she's like, no, I'm going to do my Annie Wilkes stuff over here. And she declined the help. Now, he said that on these plates that were served to the guests, you had mashed potatoes, green beans, and an individual beef Wellington each. Now, once again, there was the talk of the plate color. Remember? So there was the whole thing about, like, the 3 guests had gray plates and she had like an orange plate or something, right? Ian also said that he and Heather ate their entire meal. Gail finished her vegetables and half of the beef Wellington. Don ate his entire meal and finished Gail, like the other half of Gail's Wellington. So he ate a lot of it, right? Now, after that, the prosecutor will ask Ian, about the onset of him and his wife, Heather, or his late wife, I should say now, had their symptoms. And Ian replied that they went to bed around like 10:30 or 11. Right before they fall asleep, that's when Heather got up. She runs to the laundry. She gets sick. And he's like, well, I felt pretty decent, right before that. But, as soon as that happened, it wasn't long after he's sick too, right? So he's like, I had to go vomit as well. Now, the couple, they never go back to bed because they basically are glued to the toilet for the rest of the evening, okay? I mean, it's just, you can only imagine imagine how sick they got. Now, eventually, of course, they go to the hospital. Ian got to the hospital. Medics at first think they have food poisoning. And of course, that's what you would think. You would never have any idea, right? And they're like, oh, it was probably the meat, and they're going about it that way. Now, Ian would also tell the court that the couple was very exhausted and very ill that night as they lay in like adjoining beds in the hospital, right? Now, as they're getting sicker and whatnot, basically what would end up happening is doctors will be consulting with other doctors, other hospitals, and from another hospital, they're like, look, this sounds like mushroom poisoning, right? And so once this starts coming down the pipeline, the doctors were like, look, this is incredibly serious, and this is obviously life or death, right? So they're like, look, this is time critical. We've already been basically wasting time here. We're going to transfer you over to this Dandenong hospital. Ian says that him and his wife are then loaded into separate ambulances and, on their way to this place. Now, Ian will also say that he was aware that Don and Gail were already at that hospital. He said that he didn't see them, but he heard Gail's voice in the pod next to him. Now, Ian would also tell the jury that he was given a charcoal drink and sedated and then slipped into a coma. So from that point, he would be transferred to the Austin hospital that's like 40 minutes away, and he would stay for several weeks and receive treatment. Over like 1 month later, September 11th, I believe it was, he was transferred to the Austin's rehabilitation ward. So this is when obviously he's starting to show signs he's doing better and whatnot, right? Now, Ian is cross-examined with Colin Mandy. Colin Mandy is Erin's, defense attorney. Now, Colin would essentially try and like confuse Ian on the stand, rewrite facts, obviously in favor of his client, Erin. So the cross-examination comes up as Colin Mandy. I'm going to read this little exchange as just like an example of it. So Ian agreed and confirmed to Mandy that there were no instructions as to which plate should be placed in front of which person. Mandy said, once those plates were placed on the table, any of your 4 guests could have sat in any of those spots. Is that correct? Ian said yes. Mandy said, can I suggest to you that there was no uniform set of plates being used by Erin on that day? And Ian said there were 4 plates that were the same. And Mandy said, is it possible that there were 2 or 3 plates that were the same and 1 that was different? And Ian said no. Okay, so let's pause there for Ian's testimony and whatnot. So I wanted to just get a little bit more into it in this video here. And this dynamic here, we talked about in the last video, but let's talk about it again here. So the whole thing about, the plates and the seating and all this and that and whatever. So here's the thing. Ian is saying, here, like, well, yeah, we could have sat anywhere, but we've discussed this if you saw my other videos. You're usually kind of taking the hostesses, whoever, their nudge, their whatever's socially appropriate in that moment for where you'll sit. So, if Ian had taken he and Heather's plates and set them down, well, you just kind of know you're standing around and that's where you're going to sit, right? Now, also when, one of the other guests would speak, and I forget who it was that said it, but maybe Heather, and this is testimony through, I believe it was Simon, where she was like, does Erin not have, is she missing cutlery, or I forget what they call the plates and stuff like that, not cutlery, but something. Basically alluding to why was one plate different? This was obvious enough to be like, what's up with that? Now, it's clear to us, at least, we can see that there's a reason why Erin did that, right? And apparently she cooked individual Wellingtons. So my interpretation is that she cooked for whatever she had made, poisoned ones, to give to the family. And she had the one on that plate that was decent. I can assure you, there's no way that she would have sat down at one of those other places, okay? I mean, you hear in the thing right here, you read, or whatever you want to call it, the defense is trying to say, well, what if I told you this, and what if I told you that? And he's like, no, this is how this was. There was a different plate. That wasn't going on there. He was there. He knew what happened. Now, Ian would also go on to testify about the conversation. They ate the meal. Everyone enjoyed the meal. Apparently, she made a very nice beef Wellington meal. And then after that, Ian would say, this is when she breaks it to us like, hey, guess what? I've got the cancer. I've got this. I've got that. The whole, pity party thing or whatever. And that they kind of clicked into place like, oh, that's why we're invited over here. Remember, Ian is a pastor. And so that adds this whole other layer to it. Now, another thing that came out in the stand was the conversations that were taking place about the surprise that Erin had invited all these people, the 4 of them, over to the home. And like one person was like, oh, Erin invited you to the house. Well, how'd that go? And well, maybe things will get better and things of this nature. So you could tell there was like this strain. Now, also keep in mind that Erin was like loaning money out to the family member, to her in-laws, Simon, his family, people like that, which I thought was very interesting. Keep in mind that Erin got that huge amount of money, like $2 point something million, right? From inheritance and whatnot. So I think that part is very intriguing. These are a couple of questions that I pose to you, if you will. If you've been following my coverage on this and my commentary videos on this, you know, like one of the big things with this for me is, number one, what's the motive, which we'll probably never know, but also, did she mean to kill them or did she just want them sick to nurse them? Erin strikes me as this also. Consider these two things right here. She's sitting here loaning money, doing this, doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. But you know how that whole thing about like loaning family money or doing this or doing that, she seems like the type person that there would be strings attached, that it wasn't just helping someone out with a home loan. It was, you owe me, and not just money, like a you're indebted to me kind of vibe, a control thing, right? Which then brings me back over to the beef Wellington thing. So then I'm like, wait a minute, because literally, y'all, this is what every day I go back and forth about if she wanted to kill them or just have them sick. Because my latest thing was I was like, she wanted to kill them, you know. But then I'm also like, this could be another control thing where everybody's sick, everyone's this, she's taking, you know, care of them, she's the hero, if you will. There also seems to be like a hero complex. Now again, more testimony came out, we've already covered that, but we'll get to that. I might go over it again in another video and whatnot, of Erin being in the true crime group on Facebook. And you know, those ladies are just gossiping right now. Can you imagine the kind of tea going back and forth? So, you know, she was doing that. And so to bring that up again in this video, what surprises me is just how ignorant she was about committing a crime. You know, I'm just like, girl, you were studying this stuff, right? I mean, apparently she was a good researcher. So these are the things that complicate the case for me. Now back to Ian and some final thoughts. So Ian held his own time on the stand. Ian didn't back down from the defense and whatnot. You know, he got up there, he told his story, and it's a heartbreaking story. I mean, remember, this man wakes up and it's like, yeah, your wife and, you know, family members are dead. You know, this is what happened. And by the way, we think it was we think it was Erin. So imagine that, right? I mean, the man's very lucky to be alive. The only bombshell thing to me about his testimony was the fact that, like, okay, we've got these plates, right? There's these several different plates that came out. Like, that's like a very obvious, like, oh, right? But we had heard of this information before. What I was looking to Ian's testimony for was like, what did she say after you ate the food? What was her demeanor like? But I guess the bombshell part of it was the lack of demeanor. The way she sat there and ate the food and then was like, hey, by the way, I have this situation going on with cancer. What should I do with the kids? What should I tell them? So on and so forth. But that she acted totally normal. The only thing that sounded abnormal, and this isn't even that abnormal, was her being weird about the pantry, you know. But it's just like, okay, I mean, that's, again, he's just gonna go in there. The ladies went and looked, but they were like redoing their pantry, so of course you're gonna, you know, if, you know, Simon had happened to be at the house and things were different, and he's talking about, I'm redoing like his, whatever the guy has, right, my work shed or the garage, and Ian was doing that or whatever, the dudes might have been more interested in that, you know, see what I'm saying? But like the guys that sounded like stayed over here and talked, and the ladies went and checked out the pantry if she let them look in there. You know, that's a little bit odd, but again, it could have just legitimately been messy, and she just didn't want people to look in there. And then the plate thing. And then the other oddness was just the fact that Erin, I mean, because I'm sorry, I think she 100% knew that she was poisoning them. It's just to what degree. So the odd thing for me going over Ian's testimony is that she was just I hate to say it, nonchalant, right? Nothing was really going on. This was just like, nope, here we go, we're doing this, which tells me, you know, we'll round this out with this. Hearing Ian talk about the normalcy of this event, this tells me that, yeah, Erin is a good researcher. She researched this, she found these mushrooms, she went and foraged them, she knew the outcome, well, I shouldn't say the outcome, she knew what to expect. Right? Because for me, and I've said this before, if you just randomly poison someone with not much knowledge of how that was going to work, you probably wouldn't want them at your house. You see what I'm saying? Like, you wouldn't want to serve them the food and then bring up some long drawn out conversation. It's almost like you would want to serve them and get them out of the house. But she seemed to be very comfortable knowing, no, we're going to have this, you know, because even then the conversation is one of, I have cancer. Right? I mean, that's a heavy thing to throw out. It's not just, well, thanks for coming. So what are we going to be singing at church Sunday? Awesome. Great. See you then. Don't let the door hit ya. That's how I would have been if I was Erin. I would have been like, y'all need to go. Y'all are getting ready to get messy, right? Y'all got to go. Okay. But she wasn't. And so that tells me she researched it. She knew that it was going to take a while and that she had time to be completely normal. She had already lined up for the kids to be gone. And even Ian would say, like, like, you know, when the kids came back, her kids were at the movies with a friend of theirs. They get dropped off and it kind of prompts things to kind of wrap up and do all this stuff, right? That being said, God bless this man. I cannot imagine, especially at his age, number one, even surviving this. It's a miracle, right? But to wake up and know Heather's gone. And how long have I been out? Oh, like over a month. What? And so was the food poisoning that bad? No, Erin tried to kill you. Oh. Anything else I need to know, right? I mean, it's like anything else, because my world is crumbling, right? Where do you go from there? So my heart breaks for him. And I mean, obviously has Simon, the church, it sounds like a support group, but nonetheless, it's hard enough to lose your loved ones, your partner, your person, your family, whoever, due to natural causes, right? But to lose them to this kind of evil is unimaginable, right? I mean, waking up and coming to this realization of all of these things have taken place. So, you know, again, just to round things out, my heart breaks for this man. So that is it. Again, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you're still watching, I greatly appreciate it. And while you're down in that comment section, let's see if they'll let me pick them up. If you could leave little sofas for Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and even little Jake behind me, you can see his little head there. And well, the rest of the sofa squad too. We all need a place to sit and talk about Erin, mushrooms, dehydrator, all that crazy stuff. And until we meet down there in the comment section to talk about that dehydrator and all that stuff, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.